Hi, my name is Dean Kirkbride. I'm the pastor of Next Christian Community, and I've been asked to talk for just a couple minutes on how prayer has changed our church in the last few months here. Next was started about 6 years ago, and when we started with the intention of establishing a very strong culture and a very strong identity, and I'm proud to say that 6 years later, we've accomplished that. As a church, we know who we are, we know what we believe, and we know what we're about. When we end each service with the words, "Go and be the church," it's not just some sort of catchy little slogan, it's actually the identity that we've established and the culture that is part of the church. We also knew, though, that when we established this culture and this identity, eventually some sort of backlash, anti-culture would begin to present itself, and that we would have to deal with that too. Well, that backlash, that anti-culture, began to really rise up about a year ago. And we saw some things that we didn't like, both from an organizational side, a ministry side, and most specifically and importantly, a spiritual side. With that, I decided that it would be good to bring a group of people together, a small group of people, of discerners and people with other kinds of similar gifts, to come together to pray on a monthly basis and to seek God out as to simply what was happening within the spiritual realm of our church, what was happening within the physical space, what was happening within the leadership, what was even happening within myself, and what was happening within the congregation. And with that, God revealed some things that we very specifically had to pray for. They were from small things to big things, from dramatic things to things that were dealt with very easily. But nonetheless, things that we needed to pray for that before we hadn't been praying about. And with that, we've seen some significant changes in our church. Some of them are untangible, the things you really can't quantify but you know exists. People wanting to grow spiritually more, people moving from an apathetic spirituality to a passionate spirituality, people engaging in worship in ways that they haven't engaged before, people becoming more transparent with who they are and where they're at. We've seen tangible things like people asking for healing, for small groups coming around people who needed help in spontaneous ways rather than me asking them to do so, from people who are rising up and wanting to lead rather than just volunteer. It's been a dramatic change in our church in the last 6 to 9 months. And most of that stuff isn't the stuff that you can just quite put your finger on and say, this has happened because of this, and here we can quantify it. But it's the subtle things. It's the beautiful things. It's the quiet things and it's the mystical things that we've seen change, and we know that they're real. And because of that, we're very encouraged. One of the things that we probably didn't do enough at when we established our church was do the kind of prayer where we just quietly sat out and seek God. We prayed a lot for stuff, and we prayed a lot for God to do things, but we didn't pause long enough to say, God, what is it that you want us to pray for? What is it that we're missing here? In the last 6 to 9 months, we've changed that. We've started to say, God, what is it about our church that needs to change? What spiritual roots do we need to pull out, and what new spiritual roots need to be put in? Since we've started doing that, we've seen old roots pulled out that were holding us back, and we've seen God put in new roots, roots that will bear fruit. And because of that, I'm deeply encouraged by this quiet, small prayer ministry within our church.